I had my near-death experience. I was seeing all these quantum physics numbers, these geometric codes, 1111, 222, 333, 444, 999. I was digesting and downloading all these numbers while I was in the tunnel. The 1111, as I understand it today, is called the awakening number. When you see 111 or 1111, it's I'm awakening too. You'll see thousands upon thousands of people all around the planet who are seeing this number now. So for me, looking back at it and answering a question, it's a shift in. Hi, I'm Peter Anthony, and I'm a guest on Your Superior Self podcast, and I say hello to you, Trey.
Peter Anthony, man, I've been waiting a long time to have this conversation. I feel like I've been digesting your material for like the last month, and I keep hearing your voice in my ear. So it's really cool to actually connect with you in person.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And also, I want to say to your listening audience or viewing audience, um, one thing I try to share with everyone, we are given a choice. And, today or tomorrow or whenever the show comes out, whenever Trey's podcast comes out, you have a choice to listen in or not. So what little bit I do share today, just welcome to my life. And I hope I'm able to inspire some people with my message.
Sure. It's funny, I say in person, right? It's actually Zoom, but it feels like it's in person, and it's like the new way, the new world of how we communicate and connect. So yeah, I think this is going to be exciting. And I agree with you 100%. We have choices. We show up every day and we make a choice whether to be happy or sad or depressed or angry. And your life essentially is governed through that, right? By those choices. So I totally agree with that message. But I want to start off this podcast with a very powerful question. I think it just really itches that curiosity part of myself. How do you, Peter Anthony, experience everyday reality? Like when you go out into the world, like how do you experience that?
Wow. I've never been asked that question ever. And that's something that on a daily basis I deal with. And the reason why I say that is because for many of us who've come back as a near-death experiencer, we come back with heightened sentences. Me as an intuitive, I'm highly sensitive to my immediate area. I'm highly sensitive to conversations. I'm highly sensitive to, I can go into a grocery store and sense energy. Part of my near-death experience afforded me the opportunity to see colors, the gift of synesthesia, if you will. So for me, I don't say it's a battle, but it's almost like, imagine, you're going to a party and imagine that you're arriving and guests are talking and, you kind of feel the energy and you don't know if they're talking about you or you just, I'm not saying there's an insecurity, but I kind of talk to those ears that understand my message because a lot of people don't get what I do. And so I've learned that the hard way. So circling back to your question, it's a challenge. I'm not going to lie to you. It's a daily challenge. And especially if I'm engaged in a conversation and the person is saying one thing and I can kind of look into their life and see that there's perhaps a situation I need to get away from. And the other end of that, sometimes I see these people, an example, this happened to me not long ago, where I saw this homeless man digging in our dumpster and I could just hear his thoughts. He was starving, he was hungry. He was a young guy. And, I'm getting out of the car and I kind of pick and choose the homeless person that I want to give money, time, energy to. And for some reason, this man's story in his head, his energy, I told him to stay here. I ran outside into my condo and came back. And I gave him food. I gave him money. And I gave him a roll of candy. I don't know why. I just gave him some candy. And you would have thought that I had given him $1 million because he looked at these lifesavers that I had given him. And he looked at me and he had tears in his eyes. And he said, gosh, candy. And it's just his whole, his inner voice was just speaking to me. So yeah, that stuff I love. I'm proud of that gift, and we all have that. I think sometimes we just, people such as ourselves or even intuitives, we hear it differently than most people.
Hmm.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just so fascinating because I was watching some of your episodes, some of the TV shows that you've done in the past, and you're like walking through these houses and exploring paranormal phenomena. And I'm thinking to myself, like, he is really getting into this, like, as far as feeling everything that's happened in this house, uh, and hearing, or seeing what took place. And I don't, a thought came into my head was like, maybe he's seeing things interdimensionally, like, or like, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And it's funny you should say that because I had this conversation with another podcast in Canada yesterday. And, I was saying what I do, and we were talking about one particular show I had worked on. I did a television show that it was on Fox years ago. But anyway, I was called in to work on this paranormal case, and it revolved around World War II and a concentration camp in Death Valley. And back during, I think, the 40s, I don't remember, 42, 43, 44, the Japanese American citizens were, put in internment camps. And, fast forward to the punch, I was sent there because there was some unusual activity going on when I arrived. Typically, when I arrive onto a sighting, you go into a haunted cave, a cemetery, you go into a haunted house, a golf course. I've done that, crime scenes, etc. And there was nothing there. It was sand. And we do this thing called, you do a walkthrough, and you have 30 minutes to do a walkthrough and get your psychic abilities kind of honed. And I was walking around and I thought, I'm not seeing anything. I'm not feeling anything. And then what triggered it, there was a security man that was there and he was paying close attention to me. And every time I would walk around, he'd kind of stay in the background and would follow me. And it was him that I connected to. And then once I touched his shoulder, everything unfolded. What happens, for me as an intuitive, I'm able to, and I don't like to use the word time travel, but in order for your audience to understand, that's kind of what I do. I have to go back to that period of time in 1940, whatever the year was, 42, 43, 44, go back to this place and allow the, if you will, the spirits, the guides, the intuition, kind of tell me what I'm seeing, what I'm feeling, what I know. And I've learned to operate with the left brain and the right brain consciousness simultaneously. So imagine you're on set, you're working on a case, and you have, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you're on. Well, I have to go back to that period of time to whatever happened. And then I have to talk to the camera guy, talk to the director, and then kind of go back to that period of time, living in two world realities. And that's not as easy as it sounds, but that's what I do.
Wow. So when you're doing that, are you there? Like, I know you're kind of seeing things, and is it a movie or are you actually taking your awareness and going back and feeling like you're actually there at the time of whatever happened occurred, or the scene of a crime or scene of a murder or scene of whatever? Like, do you feel like your awareness is there in that moment?
It's kind of a layered answer, because I use the word time travel. You go back and you sense, you feel, and especially when you're relying on your gut feelings. And here's what happens with me. And I love the analogy. It's like a movie. It actually is like a movie. It's like, to your audience that's listening, understand how I operate. It's like pressing your remote control, or your DVR and pushing fast forward. I get quick images, boom, 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 just like that, and they come in so quickly. It's almost like if you watch Jason Bourne and his flashbacks of who he was and he's trying to figure out his past. I'm getting these fast forward videos that are giving me information. And my job as an intuitive is to kind of pick and choose which one makes sense. And what happens, the more and more I'm involved and walking around and just kind of feeling the energy, it's almost like when we go into meditation. When you go into meditation, you go into a REM cycle. the beta, the theta, the delta consciousness. And when you go into that state of consciousness, we're all connected. And I've just happened to work on something that's a little bit more on a higher level of intuition. Does that answer your question?
Sure. Yeah. No, absolutely. What don't we understand about the paranormal, right? Like,
Oh,
I feel
wow.
like there's so many, like, you've worked in news, you've worked in, TV, television, and it seems like, even on YouTube, the best videos get are the most fear-based titles, right? Like, try and make you click. But, you've worked intimately with the paranormal phenomena. Like, what don't we understand about it?
Well, boy, great question. And you're ready for this answer. And I'm sure my agent's going to not be pleased with this. um, Hollywood has created a boo effect, BOO exclamation point, based on ratings. There are a lot of shows I've seen today that I feel, oh gosh, that's kind of hocus pocus. It's kind of witchy woo woo. But think about shows that keep airing over and over and over again. I'm not belittling the crew, because what they do is amazing, and obviously the intuitives they use are amazing. But you have the higher ups, the suits as we call them, make the decisions. And so I think it's not just the paranormal world. I mean, think about where we are in terms of crime and television series. Think about where we are at Marvel. Everything is based on the good versus evil. And that's part of our consciousness. And that's what's wrong with us today. And that's why I think my message, or many near-death experience messages, are coming through, because we teach another type of philosophy. And so I said, for me, I've worked on so many cases, so many, even cases behind the scenes, helping, people who are dealing with, tragedies. But I have to say, honestly speaking, the majority of the cases that I've worked on, it's nothing more than a trapped spirit that wants to get to the other side. And so what I've learned in terms of, you understand how the grids work in the body, I guess the chakras, we have the head chakra, we have the base chakra, we have the solar plexus, the chakra, the mid-second, the heart chakra. When you are aligned in meditation, your chakras basically get you into a REM cycle. And when you're in that REM cycle, you're kind of able to have a lot of things that take place in your life. I think what we all have is this gift. You've been in a room and all of a sudden you feel, I shouldn't be there. You are going to go down the street. We rely on our intuition, but the logic says, oh, well, it's just 5 minutes, from home, I'll go down this street. We don't listen to our intuition. Back to your original question, I think the boo effect that's taken place is fear-based. So back to the cases, most of the cases I've worked on, it's nothing more than spirits that want to go the other side. And when they see people like me or those who are intuitives, what I do understand is that this is your solar plexus. This is the yellow chakra. This is a very lighted area on your physical body. They are drawn to that light.
Really? So do they think that is the light that they're trying to
Well,
go to?
what they're seeing in spirit world, and I'm just assuming, I have nothing to back this up. I've just seen in the many cases I've worked on that, and it's not just the spirits. I have that with dogs, cats. For some reason, they are attracted to me. Even hummingbirds and hawk. I think that there's an energy that we all have, that connects to earth, that connects to trees, that connects to the animal kingdom, that connects to the other side. And I say something here. When you've been to the other side and you come back, these spirits recognize that.
Really?
So you're nothing more than a conduit, as far as I'm concerned.
Sure. Do you help them go to the light?
Well, when you're on a television show and you've got 30 minutes to kind of do your walk and talk and get the information out there, it's not like you can go and say, okay, first of all, spirits don't have a union. We don't sit here and stop and say, hey, I'll be there in 30 minutes or so. You're kind of on a time crunch. So, it's not, sometimes I'm not able to do that. Now, what has happened to me before, I've had them follow me home. And that's where I think, for the most part, I find closure. I sometimes don't know which spirit has come to visit. I have one spirit, and it hasn't happened in a while, but this spirit likes to play with marbles, and you can hear the marbles on the floor, like a tile floor, and you can hear them dropping and falling. I also hear one spirit, the chiming of bells, like cathedral bells, and that stuff kind of bothers me because you're having your normal day, and all of a sudden you have marbles on the floor, the bells chiming. To someone who's not attuned to this type of understanding, we're kind of deemed crazy. So that's why I said earlier, I talk to those ears who understand.
Sure. Can you help them though? Like, could you, if they follow you home, like, could you help direct them towards the light?
Well, what I try to ask for, and you see this so often, and they're very scary paranormal shows, especially the movies. Obviously they ask for their names, etc. Um, Sometimes it's nothing more; they're just stuck and they're attracted to you, or they are sending you a message. Oftentimes, when I work on a legitimate case, I mean, an actual haunting or an actual case that needs to be resolved, they usually come to me in the middle of the night, like they did last night.
Really?
And yes, I don't know why they showed up last night. I'm just doing a normal show with you, and so I was kind of up and out and tossing and turning. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because we're talking about this subject. I won't maybe know that until a bit later. But they do visit me, and especially if the case is rather intense, they tend to show up.
Sure. Did they ever give you, like Peter, profound information about your life and your path?
Yeah, I'm. I guess I get a little concerned where we as a collective consciousness are going. We, I think, as humanity, are making some wrong choices. We are making a lot of errors along the way, and I do get messages from time to time, um, if you will, prophecies. I don't want to go into that because it certainly can turn off your audience, especially if they're not attuned to this message. But yeah, I do get messages, and I kind of keep those messages to myself. I am working on my second book, and I am going to discuss in detail a lot of these prophecies of where collective consciousness is going. So I'll wait till that book comes out and we can talk about it
Sure. 100%. You got to wait, guys, and buy his
then.
book. So did you have any of these gifts prior to your NDE?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, I was born and raised Catholic, um, very strict Catholic, an Italian family, obviously. So, we went to catechism, we went to Catholic school. I mean, the typical Italian family is like, I'm surprised they don't have a rosary in my neck out of guilt today. But, but that's just how I was raised. And I was quiet, shy, introverted, um, smart, kind of a brainiac, kind of a geek. And I think, my past was I had a slight speech impediment. So I was reluctant to speak, um, for the fear of being made fun of, obviously. And so I kind of, that part of my past life was one of just an introvert. So I look back at that, and of course, after my near-death experience, you can't get me to shut up. So I kind of came back with a whole, vocabulary, that needed to be expressed on some way. But so the past Peter Anthony, agnostic, if you will. I lost the majority of my family at a very young age when I was in my 20s. Was an orphan at that time of my life. I just was driven by career, by money, by success. I mean, those things that we're kind of taught to go out and do. And I think for me that was, I wanted to become a special effects makeup artist. That's where my gift at that time was. Could paint, I could sculpt, I could draw, you name it. I could watercolor, portrait. I was very gifted in that part of my life at that time. I lost that ability when I had my near-death experience. When I came back, I still today cannot draw. So that was where I was at that time. And so for me, back in the 80s and 90s, there was Leviathan, the Alien franchise, Terminator franchise, all those, Star Wars, all those type of movies were very popular in the 90s. And I wanted to get on set and make monsters and do special effects. That's where I was just, I was passionate, I was driven. So that obviously changed.
Yeah, man. What is its significance, right? And I've heard you talk about this. November 11th, 11/11.
Hmm.
Why do you think it was that date and that time that you passed away from this plane of existence?
Gosh, you know, the 11/11 to this day is still very prevalent, day in and day out. I mean, I can look up, it's 11/11. I can be driving down the street and I'll look up, it's 11/11 in Geary Street. I don't know why, but looking back at that particular time, it being, for me, after the near death experience, I was driven by that number. Back in the late 80s and 90s, there were no numerology books on 11/11. There was nothing. We had basic numbers of 1 through 9. A is number 1, B is number 2, C 3, etc. So when I began to study numerology after processing my near death experience, I started doing research on the number 11/11. And there was only one book at the time written by an author, and her book was kind of way out there, and it didn't resonate with my consciousness. So I just started studying, and it took me 7 years of studying astrology and numerology that I began to uncover a little bit of that number. And then all of a sudden, there was a book out that really resonated with me by a numerologist. I believe her name was Dusty Bunker. I can't remember her name, so excuse me if the wrong name. But her books detail what we call the double numbers, and then went into the quads. And for me, that was like, oh my God, my pot of gold. Because when I was on the other side and going through the tunnel of light, I was seeing all these quantum physics numbers, these geometric codes: 11/11, 222, 333, 444, 999, 777. And at the time, obviously, I was digesting and downloading all these numbers while I was in the tunnel. Coming back, I guess it's almost like coming out of a dream, but you remember the dream vividly, and all of a sudden the mission starts. Your request starts, and you start trying to do your homework and find these numbers. So back to your question, sorry for such a long answer. For me, the 11/11, as I understand it today, is called the awakening number. When you see 111 or 11/11, it's I'm awakening too. And if you Google people seeing 11/11 or 111 or these numbers I've just mentioned, you'll see thousands upon thousands of people all around the planet who are seeing this number now. And to me, it's mind blowing. So for me, looking back at and answering a question, it's a shift in consciousness. And that's where we're going. Shows like when I had my near death experience, there were no shows. People like me were laughed upon. We were a circus act. We weren't really listened to. So that's why I said, for me, I went inward and just kind of did my homework and read and became, an introvert, more so than I had ever been before. But then when I met someone who identified me as had a near death experience, I believe it or not, at a salon getting a haircut, this woman just came over to me and she said, "You died, didn't you? You came back." And that to me was a sense of freedom, because how she knew, I mean, I discovered in our conversation at the shampoo bowl that she had gone in to have some surgery, some elective surgery, and she had a near-death experience. Just started talking back and forth, and that was my first aha, that what I was seeing on the other side was indeed truth, and certainly not being dismissed by the priest and the therapist and the counselors and you name it. I heard more no's than I heard yes, and then for me it was just that one yes, and that really just motivated me to do more research.
Hmm. Well, it's fascinating because, like, do you think, like, when you went through the tunnel and you're seeing all these number sequences, do you think that supports the hypothesis that we live like in a virtual reality or a simulation to where like everything has like sacred geometry and sacred numbers associated with it, like the Great Pyramids, for example?
Well, I think I'll give you a basic answer to that. Everything revolves around math, everything revolves around sound, and everything revolves around color. Think about that. And for those who are tuning into this today, I mean, if you want to watch Close Encounters of the Third Kind, go back to that one particular moment at the end of the movie when all these people have been seeing this mountain, this hill, and they all find this mountain, this hill, and here you have, our scientists, our government, communicating with ETs through what? Math, color, and sound.
I mean, can we ever really prove that we're in a simulation or virtual reality? I don't know if we can, right? But I know that there is commonalities that we see in like sacred geometry, pi ratio, the pyramids. I see numbers all the time, sequences like just randomly that are more. I don't know. They're becoming more like 777, like 444, 999, 99. And they're just popping up in my reality, like not just by mere chance. It's like when I look over to my left, I'll see it. When I look over to my right, when I look at my watch, right? So I think it is something greater trying to get my attention awareness, right? And like, kind of prodding me and saying,
Oh,
hey,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's for me, the it was my doctor who came to me, back when I had this near death experience. It wasn't the surgeons and the nurses and medical crew that that told me about the 11/11. It was my doctor who said, it's kind of weird that you died, on November the 11th, and I was in operating room number 11. And so, that one little sentence, that one little aha, that kind of resonated, and I think that's what it said. That was just the beginning stages of my discovery of the 11/11. So back to your statement there, which is very powerful. I think the more attuned we become, what we're experiencing, going back to that Steven Spielberg movie, all of a sudden, not everyone's seeing this number. What's happening, the shift in consciousness, are the people that are awakening to this new reality are seeing these numbers. I was in a car with a friend of mine. I was talking about, seeing these numbers, and here I am, there's this taxi driving with the number 444 on it. And I was at 333, I can't remember, Indian Canyon. And here I am. Do you see them saying these random acts of numbers, these codes, these triple codes that were happening? And I turned to my friend George, you see there? And he looked up, and of course the cab was gone, and I passed the stop sign and nothing. That was meant for me. And as I said, I see these things happening all the time. And for me, what's happening more and more so is the 777 and the 77. I am seeing these numbers more so than I ever have in my entire life. And like you, I'm going, why? I don't know why. I know the 7 in numerology is sacred. It's also about rise and fall. It's also about going within. It's also about intuition. It's about trusting. So you add all those together, and it's about trusting our intuition and being open to information. And I think that, in my opinion, I don't have anything to base it on, but I think we're being communicated to by something that's far more intelligent than we can understand.
sure. When you died and had your near death, did you ever encounter the God source, like that entity, like that power, the energy?
Um, wow, yeah. I had 2 different phases: the life review, and then when I went through the I call it the bullseye, the spinning bullseye, the tunnel. I had a life review, and I was sitting in a tree, and I talked about this yesterday with one of my podcasts. At the time, I didn't know what this tree was. I felt when you're going through your tunnel and you're having your life review, you don't question, like, why am I in a tree, and why am I seeing these codes, and who are you? Your mind doesn't go in terms of logic as much as you go into, I'm allowing the situation to unfold and trusting. So here I am, my first conversation with an intelligent being, that to this day I can't explain, but yet I'm seeing a physical form of light, and I'm having conversations with this being far more advanced than anything that I've ever encountered. And many people who email me want to know, oh, that was Jesus. And, I can't say that it was Jesus. I didn't see, again, growing up Catholic, the interpretation of Jesus as I understood him to be. But I did feel that this was a being that was highly intelligent, and the information that I received was beyond, even to this day, trying to go back to that moment of my near-death experience, it's still hard for me to understand. But yes, I did have a communication with a more advanced being in a place I call Bardo. If you're Catholic, you understand, we refer to this as limbo purgatory. If you're Buddhist, you understand this is the in-between place. So for me, that was an experience of having a conversation that, wow. Yeah, I think we live in a very complex world. But yeah, the bylaws of the universe are quite simple. Love, compassion, help, be kind. I think what I learned when I was on the other side. We as a consciousness are so riddled with judgment, and so I think for me that was something I had to let go of, because even coming back and judging myself for thinking about these numbers or believing that these were the truth when somebody said that they weren't. I think what I learned from my story is I had to trust my inner self. I had to trust that my truth that I experienced on the other side was what I saw on the other side. Whether people believe in it or not, for me, it was my truth reality. So I think the most important thing, going back to the being, I do believe that there is a highly intelligent something that governs us, and in all capacities. Everything on this planet that is breathing has purpose, has life, is here. I think when we, as a collective conscious, destroy or kill or have wars, we are not creating the love consciousness, the betterment of mankind. And that bothers me. And that's what I think day in and day out when I read the news and watch the pundits and the talking heads. We are motivated and geared by fear. And I have to choose not to listen to their reality. When I watch the news, Trey, I turn the volume down and I pay attention to body language. And that's how I discover truth.
Really? How much of that is truth in that news reporting? Just
In
from body
terms of
language,
news,
just from
yeah,
body
body
language.
language. You look at for me, um, rigorous hand motions. I look at them looking down and not looking into the camera. I look at this. The typical things you learn. Especially working on different cases. And having been gifted with the gift of intuition, I just sometimes I sit back and just listen with my eyes and watch.
Mm,
So yeah, I think that for me, it's just a way. And again, just for me, it's my way of listening to what I believe to be truth. And then here's what happens. We go back to those numbers. So let's say I have a doubting moment. Well, I listened to that, or I watched that, or this conversation about this particular case is kind of iffy. And then I ask the universe, God, if you will, the intelligence universe, to give me a sign. And I know if you see 1111 or 777 or one of those triple codes, I'm on the right path. And that's what I listen to. That's what I pay attention to. And that's how I go.
wow, I love that. That's so powerful. Um, you said that you've learned, I mean, you've had a lot of life lessons, and especially, directly correlated with your near-death experience. You talked about on the other side, there is no judgment. You had this perspective about the environment and how we harm that. And then you also
Mm-hmm.
said that we give our power away here, right? Like we don't understand that we're giving our power away in some of the choices that we make because of the programs. My question to you is, right, you watch the news, you see all the headlines, like I guess, is the greater power that is here now on Earth, like, does it know? Do they know, whoever's doing this manipulation know, like, we are these powerful beings and are trying to control us through these programs, through these news reports, through these headlines, right? To disempower us so that we don't know who we truly are.
Well, let's just take a visit down history. Um, if you go back to, and God, here goes me and my open mouth. Um, so I kind of I don't look at red party versus blue party. Got it? What I look at, because, on the other side, there's not the Republicans, there's not the Democrats, there's not the liberals, there's not the atheists, there's none of that. There's no judgment of that. It goes back to just do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And I think there's this thing called greedy consciousness, and it's all based in numbers and money. So for me, I have to pay attention to, um, we go back with the Romans, we go back to the Greeks, we go back to the Civil War, we go back to World War II. we go back into these power and divide and conquer and divide consciousness, and take away from humanity, and those at the top get more than they should. I think what's happening right now, why shows like yours are so popular these days, is because we've lost faith in our governments, we've lost faith in our educational system, we lost faith, obviously, in our judiciary system, we lost faith in everything, and all of a sudden we have another reality during COVID, which presented Zoom. Everything changed on a dime in 2020. In 2020, numerology, that's hindsight. That's the awareness tuning into a change is coming. And so looking back at that, when I was in the middle of the book tour, everything changed. I had to now do Zoom meetings. And then all of a sudden, everyone was on the internet. YouTube skyrocketed with this type of program. And so I think about that. I think what I'm seeing here is a divided consciousness. Divided consciousness being, you're either you're coming from a place of good and truth and trying to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, or you're not. It's kind of like the paradoxical consciousness, good versus evil, greed versus gratitude, God, what else? Hate versus love. So as I said, I don't mean to simplify, but in terms of that's kind of where we're going. So I think the more and more people who are awakening to the possibilities of listening to your type of shows, I could say something today that's like, oh, I don't believe that. But I could also say something today that, oh, wow, that makes sense. So I think your job, my job, is not to worry about what the masses are thinking or judging. I think so much for me on how I look at things. If there's one person that listens today to this show and they get our message today, then you and I have done our job. Next.
I love that. Next. Because I always think about that, right? Like I was watching the football game last weekend and all the commercials that are coming out that are very like, the big pharma, big alcohol, fried foods and all of this, right? Trying to, hey, you can only be happy if you consume these things, right? Like this is happiness. So it's like, are the elites, have they known for a really long time, big religion, big government, big institution, have known that we are these powerful creators, these powerful beings, and we need to suppress them, because if we don't, that means that everybody will become more educated, consciousness will rise, and then we'll all be equals in this world, in this reality, and we can't have that for whatever reason, right? Like we need, again, going to your point of greed consciousness, like I always think about that when I'm watching these mainstream media outlets and what they're producing for people and like manipulation, right? Like that's just, I've become more aware of that recently, and I'm becoming more hyper focused on like protecting my awareness. It's like what we give our focus to and our attention is where our energy goes. So like if I want to become more spiritual or increase my consciousness, I really, to your point earlier about going within and being really like deeper dive in the self, like I feel like I have to do these protocols in order for my awareness not to escape me, so that way I can strengthen that power within and that connection with the higher universe, the source, the creator, whatever you want to call that. And then I start remembering more about who we truly are, and then I'm able to have these discussions from a place of love and gratitude that I feel like operates at a higher vibration and spreads, it's contagious. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'll simplify this. We as a collective consciousness, and I'll say more so here in America, or excuse me, the United States, we are manipulated by sales consciousness. We have to buy. So let's look at TV commercials, that wonderful, beautiful, new 2024, whatever the car of the year is, or the number one movie is, the best actress is. It's always about, or use this cream for. You can look like, this, number one fashion runway model. We are governed by sales mentality. And so getting back to your question about those at the top, and this has been going on for centuries. I think what's happening is that humankind is waking up. And let me tell you why. Because the things that are basic things in our life, cable. I just got an increase in my cable bill again. And so everything keeps going up. So, and then so, well, if you want this package, then you got to do this. You get the thing they gave you now is being taken away. And that's kind of, you think about that all throughout, where we are in terms of consciousness. They're doing the same thing with our insurance. Now this particular medicine has gone up to this. And so, as I said, so it's a give and take. And I think, going back to you and I, and many other shows at this stage of the game are basically sharing information that people are going, that makes sense. They may not understand the near-death experience. They may not understand, witchy-woo with spirituality, but they do understand consciousness, and they do understand when something's taken away. And all we're doing is giving them a reason to think about. All we're doing is nudging them in another direction. Flowers grow at different times. I learned a long time ago not to hold someone accountable for not believing in what I believe, because I had someone years and years and years ago reach out to me and said, everything you said to me in a numerology chart, I didn't believe, and yet it happened. And this man didn't believe in anything. So, again, I go back to that. I think many of us are awakening to these things that are being taken away from us. We're going, why?
Yeah.
And so I think, going back to your question, which is beautiful, even your statement, I think we are, deciding to make better choices.
Yeah.
And
100%.
That's what's happening. And the choices may not necessarily resonate with those other people who are in control. Thus, the dividing consciousness. You conquer in fear. So rather than the people rising and changing, and again, go back to history, you go back to France, you go back to England, you go back to all these, advanced civilizations, and there's always been this rise and there's always been this fall. We have to make a choice. Are we going to do that again? Are we going to repeat that rise and fall? And then next thing you know, we have another empire. So as I said, I think for me, my part in all this, and which is interesting, for years and years and years, I had a female audience. After COVID, my audience is young and male. I don't know why. It just shifted on a dime. And then the podcast shows that we're coming out, we're basically monopolized, we're mostly by women. And all of a sudden, the shows I'm getting are basically male hosts. That, to me, and you have to understand my history, going back into the 90s and the 2000s, no one listened to me. It wasn't until I got on the show Sightings, when I became a paranormal investigator, that I was, eager to talk about my near-death experience. And then this one guy, I had a near-death experience, I do too, so what, all of a sudden I found my tribe, and I just felt more comfortable. So I think that's what we're doing. We're finding our tribe, and we're trying to find people who relate to our consciousness. And I think more and more people are tuning into this type of reality, because often cases, I think people who've had near-death experiences, we've become the ambassadors of truth, a new awakening, a new awareness, and people are listening to our stories.
Sure. No, I agree. Have you been able to reconnect with that space, that energy, that consciousness when you crossed over in your NDE?
Yeah. I had one of the most powerful experiences in my life, actually two, in 1998. I had another encounter on an airplane at 30,000 feet. I went to Maui, another encounter. Crossing over, I don't know what it was. I went to Maui, climbed I think the volcano was I can't remember the Halilangaka. I can't remember the name. But anyway, I had a powerful experience there. My consciousness changed in Maui at that time, and it shifted me into a more powerful message. With my readings, I decided, I'm not just going to be doing readings anymore for people who are interested in reading the lotto, or my husband doesn't love me, my wife left. I stopped doing that. My message then, because of that experience, what happened to me in Maui, made me seek out this: provide me the people, the places, and the situations, and my job is to show up. And I began to use that mantra as: provide me the clients who understand my message, provide me the situations where I need to be, and the experiences. And that shifted right there for me. And all of a sudden, my whole world changed. My whole world shifted. And then my next experience was I don't know that it was a near death experience, but I got food poisoning and I didn't realize at the time I let something go. And on 0704 2009, I didn't realize when I was admitted to the emergency room that I had tapeworms that were inside of me that were eating away, and I had let them. They were been in there for a while. Anyway, I had this weird, strange out of body experience, if you will, on 07, 04, 09. When you add that all the way across, 11/11. And
Wow.
what time was I in admitted? 1:11. And that to me said, okay, kid, pay attention. And it was the healing process of that. I lost a lot of weight, and I had been diagnosed with Crohn's disease years, the result of my near death. I had a perforated viscus in the late 80s. This all went back to the same medications because I all of a sudden, the Crohn's disease that I had was out of remission, and all of a sudden I was active, and they put me back on the same medications, and it just created side effects that were detrimental. And so I had to go back into my whole holistic approach: vitamins, herbs, meditation, pure aloe vera juice, garlic, all those things that I knew that would soothe and get my chakras in line. That sounds very witchy woo, but that's what I did. And then again, that changed my perspective of, get on your path, you do what you're supposed to do and get your message out.
Wow.
But it literally just reminded me that once again, you and I could, have our end day today. And so for me, I learned that our gift of life, the breath of life, is very powerful. And every day, and people make fun of me for doing this, but I do it. I get up and have my gratitude bike ride, and I go to a bridge where the river flows, and I say, "Thank you, God, for this conversation with Trey today. I bless everything in my life, and it's not because I'm doing it to get. I'm doing it to appreciate. And when I appreciate something, then those little glimmers come to me the next day." I put out, it's interesting, I told you I went through this sort of wave in and out of, podcasts, all of a sudden everything stopped. And I go back to provide the people, the places, the situations. I said, you know what? I really would like to get this message out there more so this next coming year in 2024. So I'm just hand this over to the universe, and I'm going to let them do what they do. And I'm going to sit back and watch it manifest. And here we are today.
Is that how you recreate your reality? Just surrendering?
I do surrender. People think, and especially men, and I have this more so with my male clients, they think when you surrender, you give up. When you surrender, you allow the universe you get out of the driver's seat and you get into the passenger seat and you let the divine guide you. However you identify the divine. If you call it God, so be it. If you call it the universe, so be it. If you call it a being, so be it. But I have learned to, they pretty well know what they're doing. We got the stars, we've got the sun, we've got the night, we've got the day, we have Mother Nature all in perfect sync. It's us as humanity that kind of screw things up. So
Mm-hmm.
I thought, what, just sit here for a while and let them guide you. And that's what I'm doing,
Sure.
by appreciation, by gratitude. That's simple for me, and it works. And not saying that some will get it and some won't, but those who get into that centered stage, going into that I guess that synchronicity of believing in itself, you allow. And that's what I learned on the other side. You allow, you don't judge, you don't push it. If I do this, I'm going to get. That's a lack mentality. That's a lack consciousness. If I surrender, sometimes rejection is protection. Sometimes the very thing you want and you think you should have, and it doesn't happen, then you go into this, poor, pitiful party consciousness. Then I'm thinking, what, that could not have been better, because what came along was just amazing. So I'm learning to trust more so. And even though I learned those lessons years ago, where I am right now, I'm in a pivotal stage in my career that I'm just trusting. And again, I go back to, I had decided to retire and just go back into the distance of the sunset and just go off on my little horse, and sunset, hi ho, I go. No, that's not happening. People keep contacting me, and I don't know why, but there's something there that needs to be expressed, I'm assuming.
Do you ever have to like when you go into these spaces and you do your work with the paranormal, do you ever have to cleanse yourself or clear your energy after that?
Oh, amazing question. Thank you for asking that. Absolutely. So good. I'm not to build your ego here. You are an amazing interviewer. I watched your show and I was like, this guy is really attuned to the right things to ask, because many don't. I do. Um, there's a ritual that I do, and it's interesting in this new place where I'm living now. I don't have a shower anymore. I mean, used to when I shower 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get in the shower, go, right? Now I'm forced to take a bath, right? Because my bathroom is quite small and the bathtub is quite small. But I sit there in this tub and I do meditation. I put on meditation music. When I work on a case, I go into this altered state of consciousness. Um, and then I kind of feel cleansed, so that when I work on something, or when I write something, I'm in this altered state of consciousness. And I, if you will, I feel ready to receive. I watched this HBO documentary on the Bee Gees, and also Tina Turner, and then Donna Summers. It was fascinating. But all three said something, and especially Andy Gibbs said something to me that really resonated with me. When they went in to do the recordings, they just showed up, and they just would sit there. And he said, I always felt that the music was out there in the universe somewhere, and my job was to tap into it, and then it would come into my consciousness, and then we would create. That's me. And that I heard the same thing with Tina Turner. I heard the same thing with Sting. And I thought, you know what? There must be something to this. Donna Summers did the same thing. You look back at this period of time in our history, they kind of set the trend to where we are in terms of music today. And especially, I think of Sting, and, he was going to Stonehenge and meditating. So going back to what I do, every year, 11/11 to 11/29, I go up to grids and I cleanse my entire physical body doing a ritual. I cleanse my mental. And how I do that, I ask God, universe, the ascended masters to forgive me for my error, not my sins, but for the errors I created on this planet, being, impatient to a CVS clerk or whatever. But all those little things, I keep score on my daily calendar. And then when it's time for me to go do my grid work, I release all that stuff. But I also do my gratitude list, and I also do my affirmation list. And that's what my process is from 11/11 to 11/29. 11/29 is 11/11. So I celebrate 11/11
I love
through
that, man.
cleansing.
I love that. Just watching some of your interviews, some of your past shows, like you really like I just love I'm so fascinated with just the scenes that you're able to portray in the storytelling of what happened in a specific location. And you talk about like, how people have died, like how people may have been murdered or how they have passed away. And there's this energy. And I feel like I'm actually watching a live scene. And this may be a difficult question to answer, but like, what does death feel like when you're watching it or when you're feeling it, right? Like, what does that feel like for the person?
Okay. Powerful question. A very powerful answer that's coming, that's going to kind of shift this interview. Um, you asked me earlier in our interview, how I go about my day and what happens and what I feel, et cetera, blah, 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 and then the cleansing part of it as well. An example, I go to the grocery store, and let's say I have a show or a podcast that I'm doing. Like this morning, I got up and I did a cleansing before I got on the show with you. And let's say I leave this place and I go to, let's say, Walmart or to our grocery store here as Ralph's. And I go in and I pass a, missing, and you see missing children, right? I was at a certain store and I was looking at this child that was missing. And I began to tap into how this child was, abducted. The perpetrator showed up next to me and was looking at the wall at the same time I was there. I got this visual of him and the child, and he left. Now, what do you do with that? You can't go to, the police, me, near-death experiencer, paranormal investigator, with this information. Because again, I've learned a long time ago, they come at you with this, you're kind of a whack job. But I have experienced that. And it bothers me. I don't know what to do with it. I was in LA going down a popular street called Fountain Avenue, and I'm on my way to an interview. And I see this police car with its sirens blaring. And as he's passing me by, I tapped into a crime that was going on blocks away in the other direction. And so that stuff is very powerful. It's very hurtful. And especially going back to being hypersensitive, what can I do? I don't know. I haven't quite learned how to process and digest. So that's a part that I don't like, that I have to deal with. I see people who are cruel to animals when I walk the street and walk my dog. That bothers me. So as I said, that stuff is really, when you come back from an near-death experience, you come back a completely different person. You're kind of rewired. Our spiritual DNA has been rewired. I have nothing to base that on. That's just what I feel inside. But we come back changed. We come back different people. Many of us come back with different gifts. I've seen people come back as musicians. I see people come back with math skills. I see other people who are come back with a gift of intuition. Some people come back as writers. So it's a little different for all of us. But I think, as I said, for me, coming back tuned into our environment, be it good or bad, it's a hard process for me, so, at times. So I feel it.
So when you're like going back to that example of the perpetrator, like, did you know he was the guy? Like,
oh, it was the strangest thing. Here you are, me in my world, going back to split reality, left brain versus right brain. I'm sitting here, and I don't know why I was drawn to this child, this little boy, but I was drawn to it. I'm sitting there, with my card about to go into the store, and there I am looking at this, and all of a sudden I'm getting like, just again, videos, and all of a sudden I feel this presence next to me, and I look around, and I could see, and if you watch one of my shows I did on sightings years ago, I see shadows, dark shadows. Dark shadows to me is my clue. This is not good energy. I mean, dark, dark, dark shadows. And I saw shadows all around this man, and he and I made eye contact, and he walked out the door and left. So, that stuff bothers me. And again, what do you do with it? I don't know. I'm sure your replies will have their opinions, but I don't feel strong in that particular area just yet, because I haven't mastered that ability yet.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, besides cleansing yourself, right? Like, or just taking a moment to like connect. I don't know. I mean, I don't have these abilities, right? Like, maybe I do. I just haven't tapped into that. And like, to question, like, how would it feel for me in my everyday reality to actually observe or like be a part of an energy field where I can sense people's energy, like vibration, or what they've done in their past, or where they're headed to, or get glimpses of their future, right? Like, when I go out to reality, I feel like I experience reality just like everyone else. Um, but there have been instances where coincidences that I don't feel like are coincidences that help us or nudge us or push us in different directions, right, in our lives. And you can either be fearful in that, right, and go back to the comfortable, or you can go into the uncomfortable where I feel like growth is. I kind of relate it to lifting weights or running or whatever. Um, I force myself to run every morning so that way I can be in the uncomfortable, so that way I can evolve my body, which aligns with my heart and my soul. I put myself in uncomfortable situations and conversations. Like, me too. Like, I'm not a big talker. Like, I don't like I'm a deep thinker. Like, having these conversations sometimes can be uncomfortable for me because of the past traumas that I have, but I put myself out there because this is something that I truly enjoy connecting with. However, it is when we ignore, right, certain aspects of ourself or try to be like what we think the masses want us to be, is when we lose that part of ourselves, that power, that connection. I'm more about like, let's dive into let's just ask the hard questions, even to ourselves, like truly, what is it like to be a creator in this reality? What does that even look like? How do I connect with that? Like what is my true purpose here? Is it to live 40, 50, 50, 60, 70, 80 years of mediocrity, right? Or am I really gonna just try my best to be the best version of myself that I can be? And for me, I'm just not built like that. I feel a calling, a pulling, a pushing, whatever you want to call that, towards something higher, a higher purpose. And I feel like we lose parts of ourselves when we ignore and deny that, right, from ourselves. Like when we say those fear programs pop up in our bodies, like for instance, like when I think about going on stage and speaking, right, like that, there's a fear program that pops up, but it's forcing myself to do those things that really stretch me, right? That provide more opportunities for myself to speak my message, my story for those to listen that may need to hear it when they need to hear it. That triggers a chain reaction, like throwing a little pebble into a lake where all the ripples are kind of affecting the mass, right? I don't know if any of that makes sense, but
Oh, more than you even can understand. My mind is click, 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 click. So let me address that because these are some powerful points. So first of all, you found your authentic purpose, and that's why you've been drawn to what you're doing because it is something that is very powerful to you. You don't fit in with the norm, right? You know that because you're a deep thinker. You analyze, you process. You're also sensitive. You want to help. You want to educate. So you have to kind of understand that you're in a level of conscious about higher learning, higher purpose, higher education, and higher thinking. Well, not many people are in that consciousness. So as I said to you earlier, I go back to those ears who understand. I was so busy years earlier trying to prove my near-death experience to the supposed experts who didn't believe. And this one person said to me, "Well, they didn't die, did they? You did." And I was like, boom, that's exactly what I needed to hear. Going out and speaking to an audience, I began talking about my near-death experience before it was trendy, before it was popular, before people even really believed in it. We were again talking in at a party in a back room secretly to one another because the other people may not get it. And all of a sudden, here we are. But I think for me, I remember the first time I was asked to go speak to a very large audience, and I do not like to speak. Doing an interview, I have to really get into uh, 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 I don't know what kind of mode you call it. Okay. I always say in my, may I speak, from my heart, my head will follow. And that's what I do. And I had to go to Houston to speak to a crowd of 3,000 and about career and the choices we make in TV and film. And I don't know what I said. I got up there and I looked at all the faces in this room, different age categories, but there was this one man front row who just was looking at me, just this brows furrowed. And I looked at him and I thought, you know what? Just speak from your heart and your head will follow. I to this day, I couldn't tell you what I said, but everything went into slow mo. And I remember this man getting up and standing and I could see the audience just, and I looked around the room and the faces and the bravado in the room. It just, every time we went from slow mo to shoot, like a movie. And I was dumbfounded. And then I had children coming up to me and saying, thank you. And so I began to realize that if we come from an authentic place, what you're doing today, and speak from that authentic part of your heart, you will have an authentic audience. And so that's what I began to shift and gear my messages towards that audience who got it, not those naysayers. And I don't care anymore. Trey, I get so much hate email from the very extreme right-wing and evangelical community. because they think I'm denouncing Jesus. They think that because I've died and become a paranormal investigator that I'm demonic. They have all this stuff in their head about who I am as a person, and I'm not gonna lie to you, that ain't easy.
Yeah.
When you open up your email and you're in a meditative state and you're drinking your coffee and like, let's go start our day, and there's that email. But I've learned to put that aside and dismiss it. And then I'll read an email, an example from a client or someone who listened to a podcast. And I think she watched the same show that you did. And she said, she shifted. She got it. And by her shifting, she may go home and talk to her children, or she may go home and talk to her husband, or she may go home and talk to her classroom. But that's how we're shifting consciousness. So add what you guys do for a living here. You're inviting an audience to listen to the message. So you and I are basically shifting consciousness one guest at a time, one interview at a time. So that's what I am excited about, because I can tell you from the 90s till, and I've been in a high profile career most of my life. I can tell you, back then, the conversations, people not believing me, friends, relationships leaving me, bosses firing me, bosses. I had one boss tell me, "You really don't believe in that BS, do you?" And I said, "Yes, I do." Out the door. So I made a choice in 2007 to come forward, and it was about I don't care what they say. I have to stand in my truth. And when we stand in our truth, it's not about the naysayers. It's about our truth, our reality, what we experience. And again, it goes back to, if one person listens to that experience or that one story or whatever that might be that day, go back to synchronicity. Maybe they happen to tune in at 2 in the afternoon, tune into this message, and they're seeing 222 and they hear our message today. Don't tell me that's not meant for them. That is all about divine synchronicity, serendipitous movement, if you will. So I'm real passionate about that kind of stuff. And as I said earlier, I just can tell you how many people said no to me until that incident at the shampoo bowl. And that changed the course of my history for this. And then going on the show Sightings, yeah, we all had near-death experience, so it's a so big deal, whatever. I felt comfortable. I was amongst my tribe. And that's what we're doing right now. Collective consciousness is finding their tribe, which is awareness. They're believing. They understand the message of kindness and compassion. We've all been on the other end of a rude driver flipping us off on the freeway. I think for me, the biggest challenge was not so much going to Maui and getting to my meditative state and being, tuned in to the universe. But what am I doing at 5 o'clock rush hour traffic in downtown Los Angeles when someone is running the red light and almost hits me? That's our test.
Sure. 100%. Peter, man, I could talk to you for weeks, months, probably a year. We have to do this again. How can people talk, or how can people connect with you?
Go to my website, theabsentprofit.com. You can send me, when you go to my contact page, it'll send you directly to my email. Go to my YouTube channel. I'm just here to promote a message. It's not about a book for me. If you like the book, fine. If you don't, I kind of look at it this way. I'm kind of like garlic. You either like me or you don't. Just because you don't like garlic doesn't mean that I'm a bad person, or I don't look at things that way. And I also just trust the universe will provide the right people, places, and situations. And when those contacts come in, if it works out and I can help, great. The other thing too, I'm working on a documentary right now about this subject that you and I are talking about. And I'm really hoping that the higher ups are really getting this. At this time, I'm not seeing that because we go back to that whole ratings thing. And so I'm really hoping that I have several shows that are out right now, documentaries that are out. One is called The Opening Door. The other is called Beyond the Grave. And they're both out. So tune into those. It's not so much about me, but all of us who've come together who've had near-death experiences. But do watch. I think it's quite educational. So other than that, but I do have a question for you as we close off.
Sure.
Why did you do this? Why are you doing what you're doing?
So there's two parts, right? Like there's a part why I'm doing the podcast, and then there's a part where why am I exploring consciousness, right? Two different answers. I'll give you the consciousness part. So because I think you'll like this. So I have a friend at work, a coworker who lost his daughter she was 7, right? Um, she had cerebral palsy, and she um, got infected with some virus, and it quickly spread to her brain, and she passed away from it. And I'm a father of 3. My youngest daughter was born the year that she passed away. And
Mm.
so I am, throughout the entire process, she was in the hospital. I'm talking to my friend, and she passes away. I go to the funeral, and I'm up there looking at this casket, and I just can't stop thinking about my kids. And it's just totally gut wrenching. And so the next couple of months afterwards, him and I are having conversations, and we're talking just about life in general and like what that looks like. And I could see over our conversations, like he's gradually getting, I wouldn't say better, but he's dealing with his grief differently than I would. Like I'd be in a ditch somewhere, like I would be in a bar somewhere. I wouldn't be able to function in this society, but he is. And so I started talking to him about that and asking why. What are you doing differently that most people do? And he started seeing a medium, psychic medium,
Mm.
and she was a evidential medium giving him evidence that nobody else would know about his daughter and their relationship. And so, which sparked my curiosity into this world, this realm, this consciousness. What is this? So I started with that, and then worked my way to near death experiences, and it just kind of exploded. From channels to just quantum mechanics, quantum physics, and so like it just keeps going and going and going. Now I'm looking at like UFOs and UAPs and different dimensional beings and all that world, right? And I never really would expected it, but I know that this little girl, this 7-year-old daughter, had a lot of influence on that, right? And so like I know that by her passing away, her memory will never die as long as this show's going, right? Because I will always live that out, and I will keep that message going that people need to hear this. They need to start questioning who they are and what we're truly doing here in this universe, and how we connect with that. And I'll close this story out by saying what really hooked me was my buddy, after he had a reading, and the medium who was talking about his daughter. It was right when the Kansas City Chiefs went to their Super Bowl, like 2018 or 2019. And the medium says to my friend, she goes, "My guides are telling me that Andy Reid's team is going to win by 11." And I'm like, he tells me this, and I'm like, dude, I don't, you know, 11, it's a football game. Like they're not going to win by 11. Sure shit, Super
Yeah.
Bowl comes, and Andy Reid's team wins by 11, and my jaw drops when I'm watching this. And I call my friend immediately. I'm like, dude, you could have been a millionaire, right? He's not even a football fan. He's not a gambler. And I was like, we started talking about it, and of course he's like, Trey, if the universe knew that I was going to make that bet, she would have never told me that, right? This was for validation. This was for us to know that there's something out there that is trying to communicate with us. And here we are today, Peter, having this conversation.
Yeah. As I said, I've been doing it for so many years. I'm blown away that people like you are doing this, where I've been on shows before where the host ridiculed me. I was laughed off stage on a major television show, a live show, back in 2000. Literally, one of those, you know, bring the freaks out on stage or the circus acts on stage. No one told me what the show was. I don't watch much television, so I get that. But it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I said, I'll never, ever put myself in circumstances like that again. And so I kind of pulled away until 2007. And I made a commitment to come forward. And no matter what they say, no matter what they do, no matter what happens, I'm going to go forward. And I have. And so I think, going back to your daughter, I lost my sister, who was my best friend. If you watched one of my interviews, we were put in an orphanage at a very young age. So the only family I had that was connected to was my sister. So when she was killed by a drunk driver, my whole life changed. I went down this hole, and I had to come out of that. And so I think for me, what changed that, besides the near-death experience, was I had an encounter with an angelic being, and that changed my life. And I've had this being come to me for years. So I think, talk about guardian angels and talk about UFOs and talk about all those things. As I said, we live in a very complex world, or at least I said that. And I think that what you're doing, think about in the next 10 years where we're going in consciousness. Look where we are right now. Look where I've been. Look what you're doing. So imagine the next 10 years where we're going. So as I said, I have to say, I went on Alex's Next Level Soul interview. I don't know, a long time ago. I can't remember how long ago it was, but he was a great interviewer. He was really someone that got me. I felt so connected to his interview. And you kind of remind me of Alex because you have that same kind of energy. You kind of delve in there. You're going off the cuff. You're asking the tough questions that need to be answered. And so I resonate to that. So as I said, and I say a lot more no's to doing shows than I do yeses these days. And for some reason, I didn't know who you were. Sorry, but I don't mean it to sound degrading you. But I thought, but my little voice said, do the show. And here we are. That's trusting. That's getting out of the driver's side of the car and getting the passenger side and let this evolve into where it needs to go. And then talking to you today, it's like, this is perfect. I'm thrilled to have been a guest on your show.
Well, I'm honored that you were here. And to be completely honest with you, Peter, like I am slowly every day learning who I am anyway. So
we all are.
Yeah, the old Trey Downs doesn't exist. And who I am today, I'm slowly empowering to be more of that co-creator with the universe. And I love having conversations with people like yourself who are the trailblazers of consciousness. So Peter, thank you.
Thank you. There are many of my friends think, what was that the Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit with the guy that had the rabbits and he was kind of like a little left center. That's how my friends see me, kind of wacky, but thank you. They would come in with signs and pick it. No. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate that very much.